One of the most misunderstood concepts is utilizing carb cycling for effective fat loss. And the biggest question I get in my DMs, to my cell phone, on coaching calls with new clients joining is, how do I put on muscle and burn fat without giving up carbs? And what I teach as a coach is, instead of restricting or pulling calories back, to effectively utilize these nutrients to grow new lean muscle tissue. As you put on more muscle, you're going to start being able to shred fat so much easier. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down how you can utilize carbohydrates to store muscle and ideally not store any fat, and if any, very minimal. So the first thing you need to understand with carb cycling is that every time you eat any sort of food, your pancreas produces insulin. Insulin is essentially your fat storage hormone, and if you use it properly, you can make sure that nutrients are partitioned more towards muscle growth and less towards fat. Anytime you eat, insulin is released by your pancreas, and this insulin is your fat storage hormone, so it's basically telling your body to signal store energy. But here's how you can actually utilize it for fat loss and effective muscle growth. See, one problem that most guys run into when they go into a bulk is they put on too much excessive, unnecessary body fat, and it slows down the process of how much muscle they can gain. Not to mention, yes, they're going to have to cut all that fat in the future. It's also going to limit how much muscle they can grow because of the insulin sensitivity. So the leaner you are, the more sensitive you're going to be to insulin, meaning that you can have a lot more insulin in your bloodstream, aka a lot more carbohydrates, and your body's still going to be able to stay lean and utilize the nutrients to build new muscle. Versus if you have a lot of body fat, you're going to also have a lot of insulin. It's going to be hard for your body to decipher, should we pull energy from body fat stores or should we pull it from all the available resources? And usually, because insulin is so high, it's going to pull from the carbs and or even protein, breaking down muscle tissue. We don't want that. Now, when it comes to calorie intake, carbohydrates produce the most insulin release. So the more carbohydrates you're eating, the more insulin that will be in your bloodstream. So the big takeaway is you want to put all of your carbohydrates, or a majority of them, around times where your body's going to utilize insulin to be able to grow muscle and not store fat. That time is your anabolic window, which is around your training window. So pre-workout, you need carbohydrates to be able to prevent muscle breakdown and also fuel performance, not just so you feel good and look good in the gym, so that you can push yourself in the gym and progress with your exercises. If you're gaining weight, it's going to be very likely you're also going to be gaining muscle, but you need the fuel there first. So knowing that, we want to put carbohydrates before our training session to prevent muscle breakdown and also to supply our muscles with adequate nutrients to make sure that we're building and getting stronger in that training session, not maintaining or losing progress. Now, the second most important time in that training window is going to be post-workout. So there are two concepts that you've probably heard, and if you haven't, let's break them down. The first one is muscle protein synthesis, which is correlated, or used to be correlated, with the anabolic window. The anabolic window was this thing where you probably heard somebody say you should drink a protein shake, or you should get carbohydrates, or you should get a high quality meal within 30 to 90 minutes of your workout. Now, research today shows in multiple studies that anabolic window is closer to about 24 to potentially even 48 hours, meaning that as long as you get a meal in literally the same or the next day, you're probably going to be fine. But the other factor that you might have heard that is extremely important is insulin sensitivity. Now, when you're exercising, specifically strength training, where you're prioritizing hypertrophy, following that training session and even across that training session, your muscle cells are a lot more sensitive, right? So you have insulin receptors. These insulin receptors essentially pull all of the nutrients from the amino acids of the protein and the glucose from the carbohydrates, and they shuttle them into the muscle cells. But if insulin sensitivity is not on point, meaning if your body isn't very effective at utilizing the insulin, then that gets shuttled to spillover, which is fat gain. If you're in a calorie surplus and this happens, then you're going to most likely gain body fat. But if you put your carbohydrates post-workout where insulin sensitivity is highest, this means you're going to be able to utilize more of those nutrients and be more effective in doing so, which means two things. Number one, you can eat more food across the day when you get really good with this process, and you won't be storing extra fat compared to what maybe you're doing right now. And the second thing that's super, super important is you're giving your body different times to utilize insulin and other times to clear it out of the stream. Now, when you fully tapped into all of the glycogen, all of the stored carbohydrates, you need to refill that. Otherwise, you risk dipping into muscle breakdown as energy. We don't want that either. So there's 3 types of energy that we can pull from. 1 is our intake, the food that we're putting in. 2 is body fat, and 3 is muscle. So we want to prioritize pulling energy from body fat. This way, the nutrients going in are prioritized towards muscle growth. So around that training window, pre, post, and even intra, so in the middle of your training session, adding in some additional carbohydrates, that is the best time for your body to utilize insulin. Again, just as a reminder, carbohydrates are what cause the most insulin release in your bloodstream. So we want to put most of those carbs in that period where insulin is going to be most efficiently utilized. Now, on the contrary, we want to have as little of these carbohydrates as possible when we're away from our training window. So all of our other meals across the day, the ones being not your pre-workout, not your post-workout, and not your intra-workout fuel, all of the other meals, we want to have minimal carbohydrates or slow digesting fibrous carbohydrates. This is going to allow insulin to be steady. We don't want a ton of these blood sugar spikes, right? So when you have a huge insulin spike, that comes, of course, with the high carbs. And that also causes your blood sugar to spike. That is not something that we want to do unless we're putting it around a training period, because if we're putting it around a period of training around that window, then our body is going to utilize the nutrients more effectively. If we put it at any time of the day, it's more likely to be stored as fat. So just to summarize this video, all you want to do to burn fat with carb cycling is you want to put most of your carbohydrates around your training window and very minimal outside of your training window. And then to go one layer up on the pyramid, you also want to put higher carbohydrate days on your more intense training days or on the muscle groups that you want to improve, so you have more energy available to get through those long energy draining training sessions. And then on the contrary, you want to have lower carbohydrate days, sometimes very low, other times moderate, on your rest days or the days where you don't need as much energy. Now, this is a great way to prevent insulin from staying elevated for too long, which leads to things like fat spillover, which is just essentially calories being turned into body fat, and 2, worsened insulin sensitivity. Because the worse that your insulin sensitivity is, meaning the more resistant you are to insulin, the harder it is to tap into body fat as energy, meaning it's going to be harder to get leaner, and the harder it's going to be to partition nutrients effectively, meaning that when you're in a cut or gain phase, the nutrients you're already eating in the exact same proportions will be less efficient, and you will actually utilize less of them for building muscle and more of them for storing fat if you keep insulin and carbs too high for too long. So you want to cycle your meals, and then you also want to cycle the days. This way you're in a calorie deficit at the end of the week, burning fat, and still staying strong and gaining muscle in your cuts. Or on the other side, if you're in a bulk, you're staying lean enough and insulin sensitive enough to not store too much fat while maximizing muscle growth. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you found this video valuable, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, or even just hear about how I help guys over 30, career-driven, high-performing men that want to utilize carb cycling for fat loss and packing on lean muscle to have a shredded, natural physique that's sustainable, consider clicking the link down below, jumping on a free strategy call with me. There's literally no pressure. I don't need any more clients, but I love helping get guys amazing results because I've seen what it does for not just my clients, but for myself and the guys I've worked with, and how fitness has genuinely changed my own life and the guys I've been able to impact. So if you've been considering working with me, or if this video just answered a few of your questions and you want to dive deeper, just literally click my calendar link down below, booking a free call. Consider reaching out to me on Instagram if that's easier. It's JStroudFit, same username as here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.